statistics, and so on. You have to hit the link to be able to see these things. What about sustainable farming? This is a big issue in Australia because we keep having droughts. When we're not having a drought, we're often having a flood. If we're not having a flood, we're often having a bushfire. So, we experience the whole gamut of disasters. So it's very interesting for kids to see how farming, and this is still under that big theme, that integrated theme of food and fibre. You can achieve the curriculum, you can see the links to what the Ministry of Education tells us they've got to learn, but you can do it in a way that's very intriguing. There's depth of understanding here. And as I said before, the kids get it. They get it. Water management in the Asian region. This is very important for us. I stand in a bucket in the shower at home to collect the water because it's very dry in Melbourne at the moment. Many families put hoses out the window onto the garden with the grey water from their washing machines. We value water because water is short. So interesting for young people to look at water management in other regions. So that's just one example, and there are so many, of geography, of integrated approaches, of sustainability, of citizenship as another way of organising curriculum, all through these amazing resources that someone else has put together for us. So, let's continue. Can you just remind me, do I finish in 15 minutes? Is that right? 15 minutes. Right, just check for me. Tell me how many minutes I've got. So, differentiated curriculum. Now, I think you used the word characterised education here. Is that right in Taiwan? You're starting to think a lot about how can schools meet the needs of local communities. We are talking a lot about how do we meet the needs of all children. I came in the car this morning, I'm very sorry, I won't name you because I'll get your name. A principal from a school. Yeah, there you are, see, no, that's not you. Where are you? You came in the car with me this morning, I'm sorry. Anyway, somewhere in the room is a principal from a school, 900 children. And I said, oh, that is such a huge priority. Oh, there you are. Oh, 900 children. 900 children means kids who are slow at learning, fast at learning, disabled, gifted, talented, coming from another place, speaking different languages, having a dialect, meaning they can't understand others, poor, rich, middle-sized incomes, difficult parents. How many of you have got difficult parents in your schools? Easy parents, pushy parents who think their child is gifted and talented, but they're not. Or gifted and talented, and the parent doesn't realise, and that child is frustrated. So, we need to actually look at different learner needs in our schools. And often when you get into these depth studies around big themes that are real, authentic, purposeful, it meets the needs of everyone. I'm wanting you to look at this photo that I've got here and see if anybody can guess where this photograph was taken of all these people in black shirts, and no, we don't want this, and people looking really happy and excited about this. Where is this? Where is this photo taken? Anyone like to guess? Hong Kong, one guess. Any other guesses? Okay, Hong Kong is right, but why and what were they all out there for in their black shirts and looking happy? No? Wasn't anything to do with Taipei? Anyone can get it? No, it's got a little bit to do with Beijing. Okay, so I went to Hong Kong last year. I go to Hong Kong quite often to work at the Hong Kong Institute of Education. And I sat down with my Chinese friends in Hong Kong and we sat down to eat a lot of delicious food. And I said, so what's been happening? How's things? And they said, did you hear about the big protests? No, missed it. Why? What happened? Did you hear about the big protests about a year ago? So, the mainland Chinese government tried to impose a curriculum for citizenship, for moral education on the Hong Kong schools. 100,000 Hong Kong Chinese people went out into the streets in protest. I missed the whole thing. I was working at my university campus in Johannesburg, in South Africa. News didn't come in. I missed it. So, university students, teachers, parents, children, academics, 100,000 put black t-shirts on and said, do not tell us what we want us to do in our schools and in our curriculum. This is telling me a lot about internationalisation. Nation states' identity with place, Hong Kong, is very important to people. People connect with place. They don't want it to be imposed, even though they are the special administrative region of China. This is something that people are prepared to go out and protest about. Mothers tie black armbands onto their children's clean white shirts. And guess what? They won. There was a backdown. The teachers were relieved that they didn't have to check whether the children were emotional and had tears in their eyes when they were learning about mainland China. So, internationalisation is complex because we need our young people to learn about the world and issues of common concern and interdependency. But at the same time, we need to understand that young people, there are diverse learner needs, and being connected to the place and space where you live or where you were born or where your parents come from or what you identify with is often very important to you as a learner. So what about negotiated curriculum? How often do we get just even 2 or 3 lessons, 2 or 3 days even, in a whole school year, to negotiate the curriculum with the kids? Are you interested in this, kids? Are you motivated to learn about it and to be engaged in it? Does it have impact on your lives? Are there real issues that you can look at deeply and close up? Is it relevant to you? Does it even have any value beyond schooling? Is the issue likely to lead to some kind of action, like the people, 100,000 people were prepared to take in Hong Kong? Taking action is something John spoke to us this morning with project-based learning. And are there resources available to investigate the issue? I think every school in the world should once a year actually have a small project where kids get to investigate something about the world that really interests them, that they're curious about, that they're interested in learning about. There are so many other teaching and learning approaches and resources. In Australia, we don't only have the Asian Education Foundation, we also have a global education project that provides weekly updates on resources to schools about issues and concerns that may be focused on Asia, that may be focused on other parts of the world as well, may include Africa, Europe, anywhere in the rest of the world. And this is going to be slow to load, but I think I'll be patient and wait. And we do need to have an eye. At the start of my presentation, I had a spinning ball. That was intentional, because it is about the whole world. So this project that is funded by something very similar to our very first guest speaker this morning, he mentioned AusAid, Australian Aid, which is an international project. And this project, if you actually look at it, it's got teaching and learning strategies here, which I'll just click on, or might try to load it for me. Yeah. Here again, the same old thing comes up. Sustainability, sustainable futures. One bite, big problem. Bites from mosquitoes. Maybe that would be a good one for the locals here in Taiwan who are a bit worried about the mosquitoes. A really interesting one for you to look at. But here, you've got a whole gallery of resources and professional learning opportunities for you to look at about global education that are, I think, very intriguing for young people. Let's go back. There is a marvellous activity there about globalisation. How many of you put up your hand if you're from a high school? teacher anywhere in the world needs to make sure that young people understand the impact of globalisation. They're living the dream, really. They're living amongst it. And therefore it's very important for them to understand what this concept means. And I won't load this activity now, but our Global Education website is that. So what should happen in the future? We do need to focus on matters of global concern, issues like sustainability. In Australia, this is now mandated. It is mandatory for all schools, every primary school, every high school, to address 3 major priorities. 1, Australia and Australia's engagement with Asia. That's the first priority. Every school must do it. 2, education for sustainability. To recognise the complex environmental, social and economic pressures that we all face. Example, forest clearance in Indonesia, once a year, that impacts on the whole region. There are many other examples. We are coal producers in Australia. We have one of the largest, worst ecological footprints in the world. We are high consumers. We need to wake up. I would take you to UNESCO. No, I will take you there because I think it's important if you haven't gone to the site that you actually have a look at it. And you'll see that there is an extraordinary multimedia teacher education program here called Teaching and Learning for a Sustainable Future that gives you the themes and the rationales. And in this are some of the most wonderful teaching and learning strategies: storytelling, values-ed, inquiry learning, future problem solving, learning outside the classroom, and then all the contemporary issues and themes as well. And as you go to each one, there's a hyperlink. In lots of ways, I think that the whole issue of resources, there's no shortage of resources. As teachers, what we find the toughest thing is finding the time at the end of a busy school day to actually go and explore them. Would you agree with that? That's one of the biggest challenges actually for us. So, I've just got 2 or 3 minutes to conclude. A very famous Australian educator said in 1993, so quite a long time ago, he said, young people need very different qualities for their futures. They need to be eco-centric, not egocentric. And they need to have respect for others, empathy. And they need to listen, love, cooperate and discuss. They need ethical and legal awareness, cultural awareness, economic and commercial awareness. What I've tried to show you in my presentation this afternoon is multiple ways that we can develop these, what I call dispositions, qualities in young people. He also said that they need political awareness about their local area and the world. They need scientific, technical and environmental awareness. They need to look at the past, the present and the future, and they need to understand the space in which they live and in which others live. We can't afford as teachers to have what this Melbourne political cartoonist said is the terror network expanding. We can't afford to have kids who just do it, just have it, just get more of it, just grab it, just own it, just get away with it. Because it's not going to work for us in the world that we're facing in the future. We need our young people to have experiential learning, inquiry learning, collaborative learning that actually gets them to engage in very active ways with what they do. Because as members of the world community, we've got a responsibility to ensure that what we do through the guise of internationalisation is to promote equity, peace, social justice and the universal realisation of human rights. So we want all our children, all our learners, to have social awareness, respect and the capacity to participate. Because, finally, this cartoon that I use very often when I talk about internationalisation is truth. Somewhere in the world right now, this image is true. It's not the result of a one-off event, a tsunami. It's global poverty, it's inequality. And the impetus is on all of us to prepare our young people for a very diverse world. So I wish you all well in your work, and I hope that you've been engaged in some way in understanding some of the challenges and possibilities in our very important work as teachers. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank you. A wonderful speech, especially introduce us a lot of international network about social studies, and also not only social studies but also curriculum integrations. I think your speech give a lot of enlightenment. So all our professors and school teachers and principals can learn a lot from your unique experience. Thank you again. Thank you.
The session is keynote speech 3. Please allow me to welcome our Chairman, Deputy Director Yu Chan-Cho from Department of International and Post-Trade Education, Ministry of Education.